Okay, coming to the end. You're still here. I love working with diehards. Some of you may know I started studying the issue of kids and technology back in the mid-1990s when I noticed how my own children were effortlessly able to use all this sophisticated technology. And at first I thought, my children are prodigies. But then I noticed that all their friends were like them, so that was a bad theory. So I worked with 300 kids, and I ended up writing the book, Growing Up Digital, in '97. And there were some big ideas in that book, but one of them was that because of the internet, this is the first time in human history when young people are an authority about something important. I was an authority on model trains when I was 11. And what I said back then is today the 11-year-old is an authority on this digital revolution that's changing every institution in society. Rather than a generation gap, kids and parents get along pretty well today. We have a generation lap where kids are lapping their parents on the digital track. That was the internet of information. Flash forward to the internet of value. I'm convinced a similar thing is starting to happen. And I've met lots of parents traveling around who said, my 15-year-old talked me into giving her or him $100 to buy some crypto, and now they paid off our mortgage or something like that. So, not so long ago, we hired one of these youngsters ourselves. So it's a great pleasure for me to bring up the winner last night of the Enterprise Blockchain Award in the youth category, Alishba Imran. Come on up.
Hi.
Hi. So Alishba, first of all, congratulations on being the inaugural winner of this important award.
Thank you.
And we're just delighted to have you here today. So let's begin. Can you just tell us a bit about yourself and how did you get into blockchain?
Yeah, so I actually joined a program called the Knowledge Society this year where I was introduced to a lot of different emerging technologies like machine learning, blockchain, genomics, and nanotechnology. And so one of the technologies that I got really interested in was actually blockchain. But at the time, it was really interesting because I always thought of blockchain as just crypto. And that was kind of the scene that I was thinking of. I never really thought that it was something that I could really use to make an impact. Until I actually read one of your books, one of your and Alex's books, and that's when I got a little bit of a different perspective on this, and I also watched your TED Talk later, and it just kind of introduced me to this big industry, and I realized that there's actually so much out there, and we can actually use this technology to solve really important problems in our world, and that's when I started to really go deep into it, and using different tools, I started to teach myself how to build different dApps, how to build smart contracts, and how to build different projects on the application to start tackling some of the issues. And that's the aspect of blockchain that I think is really interesting that not a lot of people are looking into, is the aspect where it can be used to actually create change and actually impact real people. And people don't realize that because it's always, there's this huge industry. You always think of crypto, Bitcoin comes to mind, but you never think about this as something that's really tangible. And I think moving forward, as we see a lot of organizations and companies collaborating together, we can see how we're starting to change and disrupt this industry, and it's becoming something that's actually starting to create change and could possibly solve some really important problems.
Are you really 15 years old? That's the way
Thank you.
That's the way I talked when I was 15. I could get a grunt out at the time. So, but you're not just talking about this. You're doing it. You're a developer. Mm-hmm. So tell us a bit about that. And you've got a big project right now that you're very passionate about. Could you explain that?
Yeah, so I've built a few projects. I've looked into tokenization for property, built a few dApps for voting and also for property exchange. But something that I'm working on right now that could possibly be a startup is called Honest Blocks. And what it is it allows people in developing countries to actually manage and share their healthcare data. If you think about a lot of these places, especially in developing places, I think the infrastructure is so poor. So the amount of ownership you actually have over your own data is not a lot, which to me is is just crazy. People don't even know where their data is going and who has their data. And so I think that's something that I was super interested in, especially in developing areas in Africa and in areas in India where there's a huge improvement of infrastructure that's really needed. And so actually visited this past winter, I visited my home, Pakistan, and I was actually announced that my cousin had been diagnosed with a fatal disease because he became really fatally ill because he'd consumed a counterfeit medicine. And that was just crazy to me. I didn't even know that this was an industry. We don't really hear about that too much in Canada or North America in general. And it automatically became something that I was so interested in. It became an issue that I wanted to dive deeper into. So it's actually crazy what I found. There's around 30 to 40% of the medicine in these areas is counterfeit. And that's just crazy if you think about it, because that's almost like half of the medicine that's going out of that country that's counterfeit. And oftentimes there's different scenarios, but some people don't even know that the medicine they're consuming is counterfeit because of poor management systems in their supply chain. So people can switch up the way that the product is before it goes on the shelf. Or sometimes it's that family can't even afford this medicine, so they're just buying counterfeit medicine thinking that it'll be better than nothing. But it's not. And that's something that
it could be worse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is worse. And so it definitely became something that I was interested in. And so I dove deeper into blockchain because that was in the back of my mind while I was doing all of this research. And there's actually a few companies that are working on tackling this issue of counterfeit medicine within the supply chain. But what I wanted to do was make it a little bit different. I also wanted to make it a collaborative platform for people to be able to actually talk to their doctors and be able to actually share this information with them. So let's say you go to the doctor, all of your information and healthcare data would be updated on this ledger frequently. And then let's say your doctor prescribes you a medicine. It would then be tracked, you would basically put in the order, and then it would be tracked through the whole supply chain, let's say from the manufacturer all the way to the consumer, which would be you. And so you'd be able to verify through every stage of the supply chain that the product you're receiving is your own. Because the current structure and the way that it works is you have a product and it becomes FDA approved, and then afterwards it just somehow ends up on shelves, right? We don't really look at a product and think about where it's coming from. And that's just not right, because we should be able to know where our products are coming from and what we're consuming, especially in developing countries where this issue is just rising. So that's why I actually use Hyperledger Fabric, and I created a platform where we allow patients to be able to actually share their information with their doctors, so you can frequently update all their health data on this platform, and then you'd also be able to track all of your products in the supply chain using this. So it just creates a platform for people to really be able to take ownership of their own information, be aware of it, be able to manage it however they'd like, and then share it with whoever they want. So something that I thought about a lot while I was creating it was there has to be a lot of rules and regulations in terms of the information, because let's say you're my doctor and I'm the patient. The kind of information that we're sharing might not necessarily be needed to know by the manufacturer or the supplier. So there has to be really constrained regulations, and I had to really specify that in the smart contract and ensure that the infrastructure of the actual product was really efficient moving forward. So I'm still working on that project, and it's something I'm really passionate about. So I really hope to continue working on it and have it done. Yeah.
Terrific. So you're addressing two of the big issues that we've been talking about here in the last couple of days. And one is knowing the provenance or the history of anything, whether it's a fish or an avocado or a piece of lettuce or whatever, or a pharmaceutical. And that's really important in pharmaceuticals too, because you need to know not only what's an authentic drug, you need to know its history. Like, was it stored at the right temperature, for example, as it moved through the supply chain? And the second big issue, as you alluded to too, is this whole question of data that we as citizens generate, like our health data, we generate. It comes from our bodies, but we don't capture it. We don't get to keep it. Someone else takes advantage of that. Now, you're more on the former. Is that correct, or are you dealing with both of these issues?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so where are you at? Honest Blocks, is that the app? And you're building it now?
Yeah,
Do you have
so
how are you funding that? Do you have a customer? How does that work?
So currently, I actually partnered with a doctor in India and a few other developers to help kind of build it out. But for the most part, I've been developing it on my own. I've created an infrastructure on Hyperledger Fabric, and I've used some sample data to see and train the information, see if it works. But I'm hoping to, in the future, actually test it at some clinics, and I'm in talks with a few people to see if we can make that happen. And that would be amazing to see it in real life and to see how it actually plays out.
So a lot of people say that your generation, you don't really give a darn about privacy or your data. You're all having your dopamine shot on Facebook and other things as other social platforms, as Joe Lubin just referred to. But you care a lot. I mean, are people wrong, or do you think there's hope here that young people will start to care about these things or do?
I think when I think about this technology in general, I think that it all comes down to our education system. And I definitely think that in order to get more youth involved and to actually get them to care about this, we need to be able to actually just change our education system and just set higher standards for students. I think that the current culture that we have in school is just not going to be working for the future generation if we want future leaders to be coming out. Because the way that the culture kind of works right now is it's kind of like a leadership board where people are trying to get to the top and get the highest marks and get into the best university. So you're not really learning much when you're just thinking about that and as your end goal. And I don't think that's wrong, but I think we definitely need more leaders that are working to actually change that and add technologies, like emerging technologies that people will care about. And there's change happening. There's like coding classes, you have computer science classes, but that's not happening in every school. And that's also the beginning. There's so much more out there. And I think in order to really do that, we have to change the mindsets and the kind of education system that we have and the people who are really dictating the way that this works. Because I think part of it that's really difficult is also the people that are kind of controlling the curriculum and people who are changing and making those really important decisions. And we have this hierarchy system where people who are sitting at the top are really controlling most of what's happening. And if they're not able to get the message of what technology really is and the impact that it can make, I think people won't care enough to change that. And it's so important because I think youth can have so much potential if they're really given the right tools and skill sets. And that's something that I've been so interested in, is just learning from other people. So oftentimes what we do at TKS, and a lot of other students do this as well, is we learn about other leaders who've been doing this stuff for a long time, because these leaders have spent X amount of years learning what they've learned, building these mindsets, training these skills, talking to industry leaders. So what if I can just learn that in a click of a search, right? That's like X amount of years that I didn't have to spend learning that. And that's just so much more knowledge that I have. So it's like crazy to think about how much acceleration can happen throughout the years if people really start taking advantage of this technology and this tool that we really do have. And I think that's all going to start from our education system.
Now, on that, TKS, it sounds like an extraordinary initiative, had a big impact in your life. Where did that come from? Or who created it? I don't know anything about it.
So the Knowledge Society, I like to say that it's basically like a human accelerator program, but for youth. So they are teaching us about some of these really emerging technologies like blockchain and AI and how we can leverage them to solve really important problems. But also outside of technologies, they're also teaching us about some of these really important skill sets, like how to build mindsets, how to talk to people, how to network. And people, we have people making projects, making articles, making videos, and it's just a really good way for us to actually train skill sets. And I think that's so important because so many people can be so successful and have a really interesting company, but if you don't have the skills to talk to people and communicate well with people, I think that's definitely where the success really comes from, and those are skills that are vital, especially moving forward in your career.
For sure. Another thing that schools could be doing is to have media literacy courses. I think every year a young person should have to go and learn about how to function in this world, how to have good BS detectors, because there's so much BS out there on the internet. How to manage your time, how to integrate this technology into your life, how to have an open mind and not just follow your own point of view. There's so much that our education system fails us, but occasionally we get exceptions like you that give us all a lot of hope. There are a bunch of influential people here. How could they help you? What do you need right now to build this app and to go save a whole bunch of lives? Do you need support, marketing, funding?
I think just in general, I think with the industry itself, blockchain, I think moving forward, in order to really make this something that's scalable and that everyone can be aware of, I think is just kind of awareness about the technology itself and how it can be used for different applications more than just crypto and Bitcoin. And I think that's really important because when people start to realize what the technology is, we just get more people emerging, we get more companies and startups that are really solving some important issues. And I think what blockchain does is really interesting because it helps to kind of create more trust and security and transparency. And that's kind of where our world is moving because if you think about all the companies that kind of have your data and information, you probably don't even know about how much information is stored on your phone and how many companies and how many applications actually have that. And sometimes you don't even have a choice in that, and people are monetizing off of your information, which I think is completely wrong. So we have to take that away. We have to be able to pull out that third party and just take control of our own information. And that's something that I'm really interested in, is how can we create a self-sovereign society where people can control what they want to do and have total access to any sort of information they want and be able to use it however they want. And I think moving forward, because our world is so data-driven, that's going to be something we're going to need more than ever. So I think as an industry, what blockchain leaders can really do is just collaborate with each other. Because I think if you really think about our end goal, we all want to get to the same point. And so I think a way for us to really accelerate this industry is just to work together and create partnerships where we can accelerate that. And I'm hoping to do that with my platform as well, because something that I find really interesting with what I'm trying to do is there's actually a huge role in government when it comes to what I'm trying to do. So I wonder how governments can also help adapt to technology and help create a scene where it's easier for these innovations to rise. When you think about a lot of the developing nations, a lot of them are actually filled with a lot of politics. And what a lot of companies are starting to do when it comes to coming up with a solution is they'll try to wrap a solution around politics. But I actually don't think that's the right way to do it. We have to be able to change the politics and make that adapt to technology while technology is trying to solve an issue. And I think that's going to be so vital for this technology to be scalable and any technology really, is the role of the government, especially when it comes to supply chain and something that's so regulatory, and laws really play a huge role in my role. So I'd love to see how we can get more people who have that role in the government start to adapt and create those changes to help more innovations come out.
Wonderful. Just one more question. So what grade are you in?
Grade 10.
Grade 10, right. So what's next for you? Besides building this app, do you want to go to university? I'm not going to ask you what career you want, because that's a ridiculous question for somebody like you. But what's the future hold for you, the next few years?
So I've been looking into a lot of different technologies. So blockchain is actually just one of them. I've also been looking into machine learning. And recently I started looking into nanotechnology. So with machine learning, I'm also really interested in genetic data and how we can use different genetic data and your gene sequencing to actually help predict different diseases. So I've been trying to figure out a way if we can use machine learning to actually make it more efficient so that we have a more personalized prediction and diagnosis. So our healthcare system right now, with a lot of machine learning models, it's like very binary. Either you have a disease or you don't have a disease. So I wanted to see if there's a way for us to overcome that and use genetic data to be able to diagnose diseases. So that's something that I'm really interested in. And then I've also been looking into nanotechnology recently, and I've been looking into graphene and how we can actually use something, we can actually induce superconductivity using different sheets of graphene. And if we twist one of the sheets, you can actually create some kind of phenomenon which produces superconductivity, which can help with creation of solar power. And if you think about the implications of that, you can use that solar power like crazy. You can use it for people who are living in slums who don't have access to the grid or don't have access to electricity, because our current electricity is very inefficient and it's not able to reach further to people. So I'm just really passionate about a lot of things, and I think for me moving forward, it would just be to really find that one thing that drives me, and I think that's definitely data. And in these developing nations, how can we help people just get the right infrastructure for them to be able to live a really sustainable life at the end of the day. And I think that's what I'm really passionate about, and that's what I want to use with all of these different technologies, build the skill so that I can create a solution to solve that really important problem.
That's good. Well, that's all great, but I think that you should have some ambition as well. You know, it was over 20 years ago, I dubbed my kids' generation the net generation. Maybe you're the precursor to the blockchain generation. I certainly hope so. But I think I can say on behalf of everybody here that listening to you gives us a lot of hope for the future.
Thank you.
Godspeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.